Well, in India for his first official visit, the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson talked tough on terror havens in Pakistan today, even going as far as to say that the US is now worried about the stability and security of Pakistan's government because of these terror organizations. Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj said that any new approach to Pakistan by the Trump administration can only work if Pakistan acts against all terror groups and not just some.
There are too many terrorist organizations that find a safe place in Pakistan from which to conduct their operations and attacks against other countries. We have extended to Pakistan certain expectations we have of their government and their leadership to deal with, in particular, these organizations. We also are concerned about the stability and security of Pakistan's government as well, as these terrorist organizations have enlarged their numbers and have enlarged their strength and their capability within Pakistan's borders. This can lead to a threat to Pakistan's own stability.
A dramatic statement by the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson soon after his meeting with Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj in Delhi. Mr. Tillerson had met the Pakistani leadership in Islamabad on Tuesday before coming to Delhi. Much of the focus of today's talks was President Trump's new South Asia policy, which he articulated in August. It looks at a bigger role for India in Afghanistan and calls on Pakistan to do more against terrorists. Sushma Swaraj, however, was clear that Trump's policy can only succeed if Islamabad gets serious.
पाकिस्तान को उनके यहाँ स्थापित आतंकवादी संगठनों की सुरक्षित शरणगाहों को खत्म करने के लिए तुरंत कदम उठाने चाहिए। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप की नई रणनीति तभी सफल हो सकती है जब पाकिस्तान बिना किसी भेदभाव के सभी आतंकवादी संगठनों के खिलाफ प्रभावी कार्यवाही करे।
Both sides also talked about a greater role for India with the US in the Indo-Pacific region. However, India ruled out stopping trade with North Korea or shutting down its mission.
जहाँ तक ट्रेड का संबंध है, हमारा और DPRK का ट्रेड बहुत कम हो गया है, बहुत ही कम हो गया है। अगर मैं मिनिमल कहूँ तो गलत नहीं होगा। और जहाँ तक एम्बेसी का सवाल है, हमारी एम्बेसी का साइज वहाँ बहुत छोटा है, लेकिन एम्बेसी है। और मैंने सेक्रेटरी टिलरसन से कहा कि आपके कुछ मित्र देशों की एम्बेसी वहाँ रहनी चाहिए, ताकि कम से कम कुछ चैनल्स ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन खुले रहें।
The US Secretary of State was pretty tough in his comments on Pakistan, making it clear that terror safe havens can't be allowed to exist, and even now questioning the stability of Pakistan's government because of terror organizations. The question though remains, just how far is the United States willing to go with Islamabad? In New Delhi, Nidhi Razdan for NDTV. Well, joining us now here in the studio, we have Ambassador K.C. Singh with us. We have Michael Kugelman of the Wilson Center, who's the Deputy Director of the Asia Program, who's joining us tonight via Skype. Mr. Chandan Mitra and Manish Tiwari stay with us. And we'll also be joined from Lahore by Arsalan Bhatti of Dunia News in just a little while. Michael Kugelman, let me take the first question straight to you. What did you think of Rex Tillerson's entire trip to South Asia since yesterday? Whatever he's articulated on Pakistan, they've been pretty tough words that I think that India would be pleased to hear. But what do we really expect to happen beyond this?
Well, this is the big question. The words that he used were strong, but we've so many times heard strong words from U.S. leaders about Pakistan. It's almost like we've seen this movie so many times. I think that the Trump administration wants to give Pakistan a bit more time before it thinks about seriously resorting to more drastic measures, and I think that Tillerson's trip to Pakistan, which he already did, and also Mattis's trip to Pakistan, which will probably come in the coming weeks, I think will be an effort to try to give the Trump administration a sense as to whether Pakistan this time is any more serious than it has been in previous years about doing more to crack down against these terrorists. Quite frankly, I'm very skeptical. I don't think much is going to change. So the question then becomes, will the U.S. really walk the talk, so to speak? Will it actually follow up with these threats that we've heard so many times from previous administrations? And in my conversations with Trump officials, in my private conversations with them, they do suggest to me that they are willing to take more drastic steps. Now, what that entails, we don't really know that. Could it entail sanctioning individual Pakistani military and intelligence officials with ties to terrorists? That's one thing that we've heard. But I think at this point we don't know, and the bottom line is that for now at least, The Trump administration wants to give Pakistan a bit more time, but I imagine that time will be limited before it starts thinking seriously about resorting to harsher measures.
Well, I want to discuss that in more detail, what you said about being skeptical on what the US would do exactly. But Ambassador Casey Singh, what stood out for me today was the comments that Rex Tillerson made on the current Pakistani government, saying that we now believe that the stability and security of the Pakistani government could be under threat because of these terror organizations. What did you think of that comment?
No, it's an incremental increase in the pressure they are applying. But I agree with the previous speaker that essentially the excitement that we had in India after the August 21 address of the president, where he spelt out his Afghanistan South Asia policy, that was probably premature. They are not about to abandon Pakistan. They are not about to sanction Pakistan. I've been to a couple of track 2 meetings in the last 3-4 weeks where senior people from US were there. Now remember that they are looking at it regionally, a regional solution for Afghanistan. That's why look at the itinerary of the secretary.
Exactly.
He goes to Saudi Arabia, he goes to Afghanistan, meets the president, he comes to Pakistan, meets the army chief, meets the government, and then he comes here. So they're looking at a regional thing. There are advantages in that, there are disadvantages, because now therefore again there's a linkage between India and Pakistan. They would start expecting from India, Pakistan will push them and say, we'll act on the actors, but you act on Kashmir, you act on other things. I don't know if that has worked. Have we appointed a Kashmir interlocutor as part of some understanding with the US? Or they asking us? I wouldn't be surprised. Why has it come at this stage?
That's interesting. You're saying that the
Yes.
appointment of Mr. Sharma here
Why did it
could
happen
be
just
linked
before?
to this.
It may be a coincidence or it may be part, because this is how US has worked in the past. Therefore, we should not get too excited about it. As far as President Trump is concerned, he's unpredictable. Mr. Tillerson's own position is very questionable.
Yeah.
There have been articles in the newspapers. They're saying he's only got till November because he's got some taxation issues. You don't call Trump an idiot and get away with it.
Moron,
because
to be
a
specific.
moron and get away with it.
Moron gate, yeah.
Though he responded by saying I need to exchange IQ scores, but he nurses those hurts. So how strong is he? And remember, this is the second visit that President Trump is making to Asia now. He's going to 5 countries in East Asia. He's gone earlier to Riyadh. He's not come to South Asia. To South Asia, he sent Mattis, he sent Tillerson. So therefore, this is in terms of their priorities, in terms of Trump's priorities, China, DPRK, nuclear issue, Japan, they come higher up than the issue here.
So, Chandan Mitra, it's interesting what Ambassador Casey Singh and Michael Kugelman have also, in a sense, said is that there's nothing for us to get too excited about in the words of this administration, even with what Rex Tillerson has said, and despite what the headlines are on some news channels about Pakistan being exposed. The fact is that really the case? Do you really believe the Americans will walk the talk in a sense this time?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I never get very excited about America's commitment to this region or to kind of defanging Pakistan. They could have definitely brought much more pressure, and Pakistan has basically in the past been a vassal state of the United States, and the US could have really done something to defang them in terms of their nuclear capability and other military capabilities. Instead, Pakistan was armed and abetted by the US. The Taliban was virtually a creation of the Americans, and with all this background, there is really nothing to get very excited about what America might say today. But I have some faith in President Trump. President Trump is a much straighter person, and he speaks his mind most of the time, unlike many of his predecessors. So I do expect that given his general worldview, he will take a sharper and harder position against Pakistan and will accomplish many of the things which his predecessors could not. To that extent, I would say Mr. Tillerson has made certain positions clear whether he stays in office or not. I think President Trump's views are very clear to me, and I hope that this time he really does walk the talk.
Well, Manish Tiwari, would it also be, let me just put this question out there, would it be in India's interest to see Pakistan being pushed against a wall on the issue of terrorism? Because obviously the Americans don't think so, which is why all these years they haven't been able to do much beyond a point. But even for India, does it serve India's interest to see that kind of pressure beyond a point?
Well, Nidhi, I think we're missing the wood for the trees. More important than what Secretary Tillerson has said today in New Delhi was the speech which he gave to the CSIS in Washington, D.C., where he spelt out the larger engagement which the United States is actually looking for with India. And that speech happened at a point in time when the Chinese Communist Party was holding its plenary once in 5 years to elect a new leadership. So therefore, there is a change in the American thinking. To some extent, President Trump, when he unveiled his new South Asia policy, had articulated it maybe not in a very sophisticated manner, but yes, there was a definite role for India which the United States sees in South Asia and in the larger Indo-Pacific region. So therefore, there is a unique opportunity. And I think India needs to grab that opportunity, and we must use all the instrumentalities that we have at our disposal, including ensuring that every kind of pressure is applied on Pakistan, because after all, what do we want from Pakistan? We don't want trade, we don't want transit, we don't want anything else. All we want is a cessation of terror. So therefore, any instrumentality, any diplomatic or coercive instrument which actually yields that purpose must be energized. And this terror which has been emanating from Pakistan from 1980 onwards, which has consumed so many innocent lives in India, needs to stop. And I think President Trump and Secretary Tillerson and their national security team, irrespective of whatever solution they are looking for in Afghanistan, because Ambassador Casey Singh and I were together at those track 1.5s, that's a different matter altogether. But insofar as Pakistan is concerned, I think we must work closely with the US administration and other governments in order to achieve this.
The point is, Ambassador Casey Singh, that for Pakistan to give up this policy of supporting terror groups, it would essentially mean abandoning this whole idea that they've had, the military certainly has had, about India. I mean, the whole objective is anti-India. The whole obsession is with, with Kashmir. It would involve turning the entire establishment upside down. And that Pakistan doesn't seem at all ready to do.
They're trying something which is very dangerous, which is mainstreaming these groups.
Yeah,
and that's why the application from Jamaat-e-Dawa, Hafiz Saeed to create a political party. And there were noises we heard from the American side which said, how do they qualify for it? Have they abandoned their commitment to terror? Have they given up their arms? Have you disarmed them? What is the criteria on the basis of which you bring them into the political mainstream? So that seems to be, don't forget, one of the candidates did fight against the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's wife. So there is an attempt to, so there is a realization that it probably can't go on the same way. But at the same time, they'll do things like getting a family released, American married to a Canadian released, all of a sudden from Haqqanis. Second thing they're doing is, we are sorry, we don't have control over Taliban, which may be partly true. And that is the problem with Trump's approach to Afghanistan. You cannot pick a quarrel with Iran. You cannot have an open problem with Russia and expect that just simply working. They had a quadrilateral meeting of the so-called Quad in Oman on the 15th, which is Pakistan, China, US and Afghanistan. And I raised the point. I said, where is India or Iran in this? And why is China there and why is India not there? So their feeling was they'll broaden it. So I think it's still work in progress. I don't think it is thought through. If you go by what Trump has done in the Gulf, he's created divisions within Shia Sunni, between Sunni. Now he's leaving. In fact, he's going for the East Asia summits, the two summits. Yeah. But he's not attending the East Asia summit.
He's leaving the day before.
So he's leaving a day before, which means he's not interested in institution building. He is out for outsourcing. He wants a quick solution. And he will not, and that Pakistan loves, because they can play the Americans. Then Trump loses interest and then you move on.
Well, I just want to ask Arsalan Bhatti, the Bureau Chief of Dunya News, joining us from Lahore. Mr. Bhatti, what is the reaction? What has been the media reporting of Mr. Tillerson's visit there and his comments there to the Pakistani leadership? I mean, we generally hear that he got a very frosty reception. Someone not so senior went to meet him at the airport and so on. But how cold has the reception been to him there?
Mr. Tillerson was not at all warmly welcomed in Pakistan. It was very clear from our gestures that a director from Foreign Affairs went to receive Mr. Tillerson from the airport, and they just simply had 4 hours stay here in Pakistan. And after that, during that 4 hours, he had a meeting, joint meeting rather, with Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi and Chief of Army Staff General Ishfaq. All those federal ministers, federal cabinet, and all the military leadership was present there. And what they said, the American narrative was that Islamabad should do more on terrorism. And Islamabad very clearly told Mr. Tillerson that they are ready to cooperate and share intelligence-based reports with the United States when and where needed. We had done our part. Now it's time to the US to act accordingly. Mr. Tillerson, although I don't know whether he is agreed or not and what he said, but the official statement from the US Embassy was very clear about it, that Mr. Tillerson asked Pakistan to do more, and Pakistan simply said, we did our part, now it's no more, now it's time, now it's the duty of America that it should do.
Well,
if everything,
that's actually quite an astounding statement, and it actually shows, Michael Kugelman, that American influence on Pakistan isn't really what it's trumped up to be. Sorry to use a cliche there, to use that word, but I mean, you have someone like Hafiz Saeed, Michael, who has a bounty of $10 billion on his head and yet can roam around freely in Islamabad and Lahore and everywhere else. So, I mean, at the end of the day, are we kidding ourselves about how much American influence there really is on Islamabad?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've been talking for 15, 16 years. Senior leaders here in Washington have been trying to get Pakistan to crack down on these anti-India and these anti-Afghanistan terror groups, and it really has not worked. It's really a mismatch of interest when it comes down to it. You know, Pakistan has cracked down against many terrorists, but those it cracks down on, of course, are those that stage attacks inside Pakistan. So the Pakistani Taliban, for example, is a shell of its former self. It really doesn't have much of an ability to stage attacks. But meanwhile, you know, the others that don't stage attacks in Pakistan, the Lashkar-e-Taibas, the Jaish-e-Mohammeds, the Haqqani networks, they're still there, and they're still strong. But you know, just to make another important point here, I think that we're talking about what the U.S. may want to do or may do to ramp up the pressure against Pakistan. There are a lot of risks for the United States to do that. I think that's an important thing to point out. So long as the U.S. has troops in Afghanistan, it's going to need to depend on Pakistan to some extent. And really, that falls along the lines of the supply routes inside Pakistan that allow NATO troops to convey supplies through the country into Afghanistan. You know, if those supply routes were to be shut down, if there were to be drastic actions taken against Pakistan, Pakistan retaliated by shutting them down, the U.S. would have a lot of problems. It would need to depend on alternative routes in Central Asia that are a lot more expensive and circuitous. And given the difficult relationship between the U.S. and Russia right now, you know, Russia, it may be very difficult to try to negotiate with Russia in a way that it would be possible for the U.S. to do those types of things. And also, Pakistan could well retaliate by cutting off intelligence cooperation with the United States, which could make it more difficult for the U.S. to go after terrorists through drone strikes and the like. So I think just to get a full picture here, it's important to highlight the fact that for all this talk about the U.S. Ramping up the pressure, tightening the screws, there are some risks for the United States and for U.S. interests, which I know people in this town are thinking quite hard about right now.
And that's why you remain skeptical. Ambassador Singh, last question to you. On the North Korea question that Sushma Swaraj was asked, that was interesting. And she was very clear, saying that, well, our trade with North Korea is minimal, you should have an embassy there, keep channels of communication open. What do you think?
I think it's absolutely the correct stand.
Yeah.
Because we are not a U.S. ally, nor we ever shall be. And I think U.S. understands it. We will have areas where we disagree. And the other one was on Chabahar, which was not answered because that was asked by Reuters. She didn't answer, and I don't think he answered either.
Not really, not directly.
So maybe in private that was discussed. I don't think that's going to change too much, but that's going to become a new friction point as the relationship between Iran and US deteriorates. Again, it'll go back to what was happening at the beginning of Manmohan Singh government, where US was telling to do something, not do something. So it's a relationship which will always have areas and we have to learn to live with it. And we have to work with China, we work with Russia. We have to swing. We are a swing power. And it's a very dangerous phase with rising swing powers, rising China, Japan, re-elected Prime Minister Abe. Therefore, in Asia Pacific, you have to be very careful not to follow Trump. You know, you have to use Trump. Trump will use you. But you have to be prepared for surprises.
Anyway, we are done.
All right. Well, a word of caution there by you, and I think an appropriate note to end on as well. Thank you very much to all our panelists for joining us on the program tonight. We leave it there this evening. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.